on Facebook. You'll be all over. Imagine what your friends will say. And KCAA reaches over 5 million people on 3 radio stations. Join the staff on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM. NBC Radio. Jump on the KCAA Express. Call 909-793-1065. That's 909-793-1065 and get ready to transmit.
Re-elect Riverside County Sheriff Stan Sniff on November 6th because Sheriff Sniff will keep us safe. The FBI reports that violent crime decreased dramatically in Riverside County in 2017. That proves the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, led by Sheriff Stan Sniff, is doing its job. Vote for experience, honesty, and integrity. Vote for the sheriff who keeps us safe. Vote to re-elect Riverside County Sheriff Stan Sniff on November 6th. Paid for by Friends of Stan Sniff.
Wet n Wild Palm Springs is the one where you get big water park fun. Yeah, dive into all the action-packed thrills with exciting rides, slippery slides, cool water adventures, and so many ways to just chill. So get everyone together and get to Wet n Wild Palm Springs. For unlimited fun, get a season pass. Buy now, get a free ticket for a friend, and more. All for just $64.99 at wetandwildpalmsprings.com or at Food for Less. Offer ends soon. Park open daily.
This is KCAA.
Since they started.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. We couldn't. Okay, we couldn't all both have problems with them. Oh, you did? Okay.
This one. Did you hear this one?
They're just not coming.
Go ahead.
Test. Test.
Test. Test. Test.
I can't hear it, guys.
Test. Okay. Test, test. Test, test. Go ahead. And good morning to all you wonderful souls out there in Radio Land. I am Reverend Irma Forward, and our show this morning is entitled Wake Up Awareness. My spiritual companion on this journey this morning is the illustrious and wonderful Jean Kennedy, religious science practitioner. Yes, there you are. And we have wonderful things to talk to you about this morning because we're taking off from where we left off last week after we worked with our shadow side and with our broken pieces. So we want to talk to you this morning about what happens after you have been working with your broken pieces and after you have acknowledged your shadow experiences. And we'll talk about that just a little bit this morning. This show itself is a living memorial to the founder and teacher at the Center for Spiritual Enrichment, Reverend Sue Constantinides. She has moved on to another expression of life, but we still want to honor her. Her teachings were very profound, and we're all better for it, actually. So I invite you to stay with us this morning, and I'm going to ask Jean to anchor us in prayer, affirmative prayer this morning for the success of this program, but also for you to successfully receive what we have to offer to you this morning. And so, Jean, if you would take care of that and then give us an idea of what the purpose of this show is as well.
Well, let's start with purpose. The purpose of our show is basically to let everyone know about the new thought religions. But I have to tell you, we're in a new studio this morning.
Yes.
And we're kind of having fun because we're in a new location and everything got moved over the weekend. So we are the first live show going on.
Right.
So the purpose of our show is to expose everyone to the philosophies of New Thought through religious science and through the teachings of unity. There's a place for everyone, and we believe that these teachings are wonderful for life awareness and to show you the magnificence of your divine.
Okay.
So join with me this morning in our invocation, where today we recognize and accept that for each one of us that God is in all and as all. We have come together in love, seeking the true path of our beliefs and recognize our spiritual home. We are guided by divine wisdom in our lessons today, so everyone listening will benefit and feel their magnificence with the oneness that we call God. We know the spiritual truth of perfection for all, including ourselves, our engineer, Joseph, our listeners, the local community, and the world. We know and accept that our words and thoughts have power, and that is our God source within each one of us. We declare these words to be our truth here and now, and we say, thank you, God, and so it is.
Oh, and so it perfectly is. Thank you for that, Jean. Our musical inspiration this morning is by Mindy Gledhill. It is entitled Rolling River God. The stones are in a river, and they are made smooth by the flowing of the river. And that is somewhat like our human experience. We go through things, but we come out a little bit smoother for it all. Clement of Alexandria said that there is one river of truth which receives tributaries from every side. Rolling River God.
Rolling river god, little stones are smooth, only once the water passes through. So I am a stone, rough and grainy still, trying to reconcile this river's chill. But when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer would be this one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Sometimes raging wild, sometimes swollen high, but never have I known this river dry. The deepest part of you is where I want to stay and feel the sharpest edges wash away. And when I close my eyes and feel you rushing by, I know that time brings change, and change takes time. And when the sunset comes, my prayer would be just one, that you might pick me up and notice that I am just a little smoother in your hand. Rolling river god, little stones are smooth, only once the water passes through.
And so we're very grateful for that opening inspiration. Rolling River God. Last week, we explored the idea of healing our broken places. And today, we want to know what happens after we have looked at our shadow side, looked at our broken places. Then what? What happens then? And we want to examine what our lives would look like if we were fully awake, fully present for it all. And that simply means that we would be fully awake and present to the life that we now have. We would be fully awake and present to who we are in every moment. We would be fully awake and present to the life that we are creating. You see, we are creators of our life experience. And we would be, again, fully awake and present to the life that we are creating with every thought that we think, with every feeling that we feel, and with every word that we speak. And so today I want to add a question to that list. What would your life be like if your heart were fully awake and present to God's grace? What would your life be like? Think about that. Being fully present to God's grace. And we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. But here's the deal, folks. Today I want you to know that God is always, and in all ways, He pays attention to our lives and to our perceived needs. And likewise, and relevant and important for us to realize in our conversation today, that God's grace is always and in all ways present and ever available. In fact, it is through God's grace that we can experience a life of beauty and wonder. But that, of course, asks a question. What is God's grace? Now, Jean, would you read for us the dictionary.com definition of what grace means from a theological point of view? What does it mean? And more particularly, what does it mean to you?
Well, I'll go through the definitions first.
Okay.
Grace, the freely given, unmerited favor and love of God. That's one.
Okay.
The influence or spirit of God operating in humans to regenerate or strengthen them. A virtue of excellence of divine origin. Also called state of grace, the condition of being in God's favor or one of elect. Moral strength, the grace to perform a duty.
Okay.
Or it could be a short prayer before or after a meal in which a blessing is asked and thanks are given. Grace to me, I believe, is a state of being in perfect harmony with God. I believe that grace is God's love that He shines on us, and that grace is a strength that we get from God's love.
Okay. I'll buy that. I'll accept all of that. And so what we want to understand, once again, that God's grace is always and in all ways present and available. It is through God's grace that we can experience a life of beauty, a life of wonder. But that, of course, begs the question. Again, Jean has defined what grace means to us. So it is my prayer and intention today that when our broadcast is complete, that you will have a more personal and a more awakened relationship with God's grace. In my religious upbringing as a child, I was told that I was living by grace and in grace, meaning that I was secure and supported by the arms of God, that I was immersed in and surrounded by the love of God. And today, in my theology of choice, which is religious science, I completely, totally, 100% still believe that. I believe, Jean, that I am living by grace. I believe that I am secure in and supported by the metaphysical arms of God. I believe that I am immersed in and surrounded by the love of God. And I say yes, yes, yes to all of this. And then so does Ernest Holmes at page 50 in the Science of Mind textbook. There's a chapter entitled What It Does. And he writes this. He says, here and now, we are surrounded by and immersed in an infinite good. How much of this infinite good is ours? All of it. All of it. All of the good in the universe is ours to have once we open up and receive all of it. We have to open up and receive it. Now, in my religious upbringing of the past, something else came with the ideas that I was living by grace, that I was secure in and supported by the arms of God, and that I was immersed in and surrounded by the love of God. And so it became a bit of a double-edged sword, because also came the idea that I didn't actually deserve this grace, and that it was completely unmerited. I was told that as a sinful human being, I could not possibly merit or deserve the grace of God because I was so flawed, and I could never even earn it because I could never be good enough. Was anybody else told that, Jean? Were you told that? What do you say to that?
Yeah,
anyway?
No. Well, to that part of my religious upbringing, I now say, no, nada, no way.
Okay. All right.
Rather, I believe in the core of my being that God's grace is now and forever freely given.
Uh-huh.
It does not have to be deserved, merited, or earned. In the Philosophy of Ernest Holmes, page 149, it says, grace is the givingness of life, and that certainly is given automatically.
It's automatic?
Automatic.
Okay. And so that means that we don't have to just do anything, but that God's grace is just simply always available.
As long as we're open and receptive to receive it.
That's right. Okay. And we don't have to do anything because God is love. God is unconditional in its givingness of love to life itself. And so, therefore, grace is an automatic response. Is that what we're saying?
That is exactly what we're saying.
Okay, we're saying that. Grace is an automatic response. Unmerited favor coming from the presence itself. And we call this presence God. It's fabulous. And I get so excited when I understand that grace is the givingness of spirit to its creation. So God gives of itself to us because God created us. And we are, as we say quite often, children of God. I frequently say that we are children of the universe and that we are expressing God itself, God doing its work through us, because this Spirit of the living God is unseen, so to speak. We can't really touch it or feel it, except as we look at each other, we see each other, and we see the presence of God. And so again, we talk about the Eastern saying of Namaste. We talked about that a little bit last week, meaning that the Christ in me, the God in me, sees the Christ in you, sees the God in you. And that is what we're talking about today when we're talking about grace, unmerited favor, because we see God moving in and through each other. There's a song by Karen Drucker, and it says that you are the face of God. We are the representatives of what God is and does its work in and through each and every one of us. And so Ernest Holmes also says, and he refers us to Psalms 45 and the 2nd verse. And it says, grace is poured upon your lips. Therefore, God has blessed you forever. God has blessed you forever. And then the Apostle Paul wrote, by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not our own doing. It is the gift of God, not because of any works. So we could say that grace is God's divine love. And then, Jean, how is this divine love given to us?
It's given freely to all.
Freely to all. That's
freely
right.
To all. What
That's
a wonderful feeling.
And then God's eternal protection is grace as well. And how is that given?
That's also freely given to all.
Okay. And then God's ever-present blessings. How is that given?
Again, freely given to all.
Okay. And then we have God's givingness, which is grace itself, and this is freely bestowed upon all. And then, Jean, we have God's gift of absolute favor. What does that sound or feel like?
That again is freely given to all.
Oh my goodness, freely given to all. These are all ways to define God's grace. And they may appear to be inadequate, but there's so much more for us to receive through God's grace. And you caught, I know, the ending phrase on every one of these descriptors, right? Freely given to all. And so it's freely given to all. Grace as divine love, grace as God's eternal protection, grace as God's ever-present blessings, grace as God's complete givingness, and grace as absolute favor. And grace is always working for us and through us constantly. You don't have to earn grace. It is not something that is paid out only to the good or to the deserving, but freely given. Freely given. Grace is not something that we have to work for. It's not anything that we have to develop. We don't have to build up. We don't have to cultivate. It just simply is. God's favor, God's givingness, God's love, God's blessings and protection come to us simply because of who we are. And sometimes we feel that we're not worth anything, that we're not worth the grace of God, so to speak. But we want to understand that we are absolutely worth the grace of God because we're here. We are created, and that we're all existing in this thing called life, as Ernest Holmes calls it, this thing called life. We are existing in this experience of life, and we are deserving of a grace. And it comes to us how? Automatically. It's just an automatic response to living life itself. And, Ernest Holmes, in The Science of Mind on page 430, indicates that God loves all alike and causes the rain to fall and the sun to shine alike upon all. In arms, which are all inclusive, divine love encompasses everything. And again, this refers to the impersonal nature of God, which says that we are all worthy, that we're all deserving of special favor, so to speak. And when I say that God is impersonal, that means that God simply always says yes. According to your belief that you have established in consciousness, God always says yes. And we're going to look at that a few Sundays from now. But just to let you know that that's coming up. God always says yes. God is impersonal. And sometimes we don't even know that we are being supported by God because we're just moving on through our life. And we may be living what some people call a dysfunctional life, or we may be functioning at peak performance. But yet and still, God always says yes. Always says yes to us, so that we can experience, so that we can grow into our greater yet to be. That is the purpose of our experience, I feel, here in this experience of life. So with divine love encompassing everything, that becomes a beautiful statement. Would you say so, Jean?
I think so.
You think so? Okay. Now, in the arms of God, which are inclusive, divine love encompasses everything. Another statement that we can feel kind of gives me goosebumps. In the arms, which are all inclusive, in the arms of God, divine love itself encompasses everything. And to me, that is the definition of grace, and it defines the impersonal nature of spirit, pure spirit. So if grace is freely bestowed upon all, why don't we necessarily feel or experience it? The answer to that is really simple. It's really quite simple. We must receive it. We must accept it. We must open our hearts and our minds, our very lives, for God's grace to have its way with us. Now, there's an author, Philip Yancey, and he wrote, "Grace is a free gift, but to receive the gift, you have to have your hands open. And a lot of people don't have their hands open." So you see, what happens here is we have to open ourselves up. We have to open our minds up. We have to have an evolved consciousness to be able to receive God's grace. If we're sitting back with a clenched fist and our arms crossed, I'm not sure that God's grace is going to support us because we're not open and receptive to it. But it's just waiting, almost begging to come in if we just open up and receive the grace of God, receive the love of God, receive the blessings of the universe, because we kind of sabotage ourselves by not being open and receptive to all the good that there is in the universe. Once again, Holmes, at his rational best, wrote in the original Science of Mind, the 1926 edition, he says that grace is not something that God imposed upon us, but is the logical result of the correct acceptance of life and a correct relationship to spirit. That's very powerful.
And it's so simple.
It is. It is very simple, very easy. Now, Ramakrishna, who was an Indian mystic and yogi during the 19th century, said the same thing a bit more poetically. He wrote, "The winds of grace are blowing all the time, and all we have to do is raise our sails."
Wow.
Think about that. Have you ever seen those ships floating out in the water with the big sails on them, and then they turn, and they're so majestic, and they're turning, and the sails themselves turn, and that is an experience of grace. You see, grace can also be described as something that is elegant in its movement, and we can say that there's a very graceful lady walking down the street, and we can see the sailboat as well as it turns with a certain amount of grace to it, and we want to accept it. We want to take our own human sails and raise them up to the point where we're open and receptive to this divine idea of grace itself. And so we want to be able to do that. We have to open our hands. We want to come into a right relationship with Spirit. In other words, we have to raise the sail. Now, there's a wonderful illustrative story from the Hindu faith of how we limit or restrict God's grace all the time. Now, Jean has said that she would remind us of this story. So, Jean, remind us of this story.
This is a wonderful story.
Okay.
A great devotee of Krishna was once challenged by some powerful men in his village who didn't believe in Krishna. They said to him, "Prove to us that Krishna is God." They looked around and saw one of their most sacred animals was dead on the road, and said to the devotee, "Through the power of Krishna, make this dead cow come back to life." The devotee replied, "This is not a problem for Krishna, but give me 3 days." He spent the next 3 days in agonizing prayer, day and night, praying to Krishna to bring the cow back to life. As each hour that passed, the cow did not come back to life. He got more and more nervous. Finally, at the 11th hour, the cow came back to life, and all the villagers rejoiced and believed that Krishna is a god. The devotee, of course, is grateful and relieved, but a short time later, he became very depressed and sad, and Krishna came to him and asked, "Why is he so sad?" "Lord, why did you make me work so hard and get so desperate when you could have brought the cow back to life immediately?" Smiling, Krishna said, "It was you who gave me 3 days' time."
Wow. Think about that, everyone. Think about that. When we are in prayer, we're asking for things and we're so busy praying, perhaps, that we don't allow Spirit to give us the gift. So we have to be open and receptive. There are no limits to the time that miracles can occur for us. They can occur at any one given time as long as we are open and receptive to the idea. But prayer is the work, affirmative prayer is the work of treating the mind, moving through the mind, moving out the cobwebs of the mind, so that we do become open and receptive to the divine influx of love, to the divine influx of our own creativity, to the divine influx that will allow us to be open and receptive to the promises. The promises being that God is always and in all ways available to us to meet our every need. And so we want to continue to acknowledge that. Holmes says that we are limited because we have not allowed the divine within us to more completely express itself. How much life can we experience? As much as we can embody. We grow in grace, as it were. We grow in power. But right today, we can expect to demonstrate or to have our prayers answered according to our belief and the embodiment of that belief. Now, Mark Nepo has written a book called The Book of Awakening. And in this book, he says, each person is born with an unencumbered spot, free of expectation and regret, free of ambition and embarrassment, free of fear and worry, an umbilical spot of grace where we were each first touched by God. It is this spot of grace that theologians call the soul. Jung calls it the seat of the unconscious. Hindu masters call it Atman. Buddhists call it Dharma. Rilke, considered the German language's greatest poet of the 20th century, calls it inwardness. And the Sufis call it Qalb, and Jesus calls it the center of our love. To know this spot of grace is to know who we are, not by surface markers of identity, not by where we work or what we wear or how we like to be addressed, but by feeling our place in relation to the infinite and inhabiting it. God's grace is like a vast ocean. We can sit on the shore and we can collect shells. We can go further still and catch a fish. Or we can dive really deep and bring back a pearl. The deeper we dive, the more we align with the divine presence and the more we are in flow of grace. And I want to leave you with a question this morning as we summarize this. What would your life be like once you have looked at your broken places, acknowledged your shadow experience? What would your life be like if you were fully awake and fully present to the presence of God's love and God's grace in your life? What would your life be like? Consider that. I ask the question once again, what would your life be like? How would your heart feel? Would your heart expand or would it contract? Think about this. What would your life be like as you experience the presence of God's love and God's grace in your heart and in your life? I leave you with that this morning, and know that life is good because you're in it with your magnificent self. So accept God's grace into your life and live up to your full potential. And so it is. And so now, Jean, we do have some prayer work that we'd like to participate in this morning.
We do.
We have some affirmative prayers that we want to send out. And so would you take care of that for us this morning?
I will.
Okay.
This morning, as I speak the truth of perfection for each person, I know that God's love and grace surrounds them and protects them. For Sandra, She has release of all negative thoughts, replaced with thoughts of well-being, good health, and healing. For Jared, he is working towards good health. He exhibits easy breathing. He exhibits easy movement and is a flowing creature with God's love. And Ernestine. For Ernestine, we know and accept that all that she desires and needs is hers now, because God does not say no. And for John, John can release his anger and bitterness and be filled with God's love and grace, because he is open and receptive to receive that now. We also say our word for all the people in Hawaii, whether they are having an issue with a volcano or they are having an issue with the hurricane and the heavy rains. We know that God surrounds and protects them, that all is going to be okay. And for all these people and for all these things and for everyone, we know and accept that God's light and love protects and heals. And we know that the McCain family that we hold dear in our hearts right now, on the passing of a beloved member that we all loved, we know that there is comfort and there is release, and we know that John McCain has moved to his next level of consciousness. And for this, we say, thank you, God, and we release these words, knowing that it's so. And so it is.
And so it perfectly is. We just simply give thanks for all that there is. Our musical inspiration, as we move towards our closing of our program this morning, is by Michael Gott, and it is called I Release and Let Go. You see, we have to release the things that challenge us and send them on to our higher power to handle for us. And so release means total release and total letting go, so that we can do the work that we are intended to do. I Release and I Let Go by Michael Gott.
Time in my life, thought I had to do it all for myself. Didn't know the grace of God was sufficient. I didn't know the love of God was at hand. But now I can say, if you are discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, you gotta let it go. You gotta let it go. You gotta let it all
Okay, so we want to release everything and know that we're here for God to do its magnificent work in and through each and every one of us. So, Jean, do you have any announcements? We don't have any announcements for you this morning.
I have a question, though.
You have a question?
Is the Center for Spiritual, or the Center for Spiritual Living in San Bernardino going to be doing a food giveaway this month?
They have completed that process right now.
Okay.
Okay, so they this is what Reverend Lavon shared with me.
Okay.
That they have completed this process, but we invite you certainly to check in with them to see if there's any special programs that they can refer you to.
Okay.
That would be great if there's a need. And I'm sure that, they have a list of organizations that are able to support at this particular time. So we'll allow that to happen. I understand also that there are a lot of events coming up, and we'll have a list of events that we can talk to you about next week, actually. The Centers for Spiritual Living, as well as other New Thought centers, are moving into the fall of the year, and that's when the learning processes start to take place. And so there'll be classes, and we're also going to be offering a metaphysical Bible class probably towards in October. We'll do that in October, and it'll be a short class because we'll be looking at the Psalms to begin with, and we'll go from there. The next thing that can happen is that we can just simply look forward to this particular time of the year. The autumn of the year is just something very special. The leaves turn and everything just kind of settles down and gets ready for the winter hibernation, so to speak. So we'll just be looking forward to that as we actually close summer now coming up. We're into almost the fall of the year. Next month that will happen. So I invite you to be still with us right now for just a few moments. Just be still and turn inward. And we'll have this closing prayer for our show today. We have had a couple of challenges, but we know that God is always able, and we have overcome, and life is good. We want to thank our engineer, Joseph, for his support this morning, as always. And so just be still with me right now. And we acknowledge that every day, from dawn to evening tide, God is and always has been. This one life that is God's life is my life right now. It is perfect, and it dwells within the being of each one of us. We dwell in gratitude for an awareness of this presence moving in and through us, expressing itself as us. We accept the divine purpose for our lives now and purposefully choose today to live it, recognizing that there is a presence which we choose to call God, and that this presence uplifts us in every area of life. It is the only power in the universe. This divine essence knows only the best for each of us, and we allow it to flow freely through us today, and we accept the grace that it has to offer. This is the truth, and we are open to it. We are so grateful for the gifts that we have in our lives. We are grateful for the awareness that provides the vision to see as Spirit sees. So today, once again, we recognize God's grace in our lives. We are so worth it. So with a great sense of appreciation for this awareness, we let go. In other words, we release it, and we let God do its magnificent work in and through each one of us. This day, we live in wonder and awe of the blessings bestowed upon this great nation, and we are thankful for the grace bestowed upon us as emissaries of pure spirit, and that grace continues to abide in our land, the United States of America. And again, we surround the McCain family with love, knowing that God's grace will support them and see them through this experience. This is our truth today. We allow it to be so, and so it perfectly is.
And so it is.
Amen.
We welcome you to check us out on Facebook. Our Facebook page is Wake Up Awareness. You can always leave a prayer request there. Also, check us out on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Wake Up Awareness. Matter of fact, I had a call last night. Somebody was trying to check it out, and they didn't spell the name right.
Okay.
And so we got that straightened out for them. And they were viewing our podcasts. So that was terrific. So please, we welcome you to join us and share with your friends. And Reverend Irma?
I think that that'll do it for us today.
I think so.
I think that that's it. We welcome you to come back next week, be with us next week, and we'll have another magnificent topic to explore to empower you to live to your highest and best, knowing that your potential is so much greater, so much higher than you acknowledge it to be. Invite you this week to open yourself to God's grace, and so it is.
And so it is.
Joseph.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.
Oh, that's way better.
Now that you mention it.
When it comes to getting better...
Bob Vila here with my home improvement tip of the day. Concrete floors are no longer found just in garages and basements. With new elegant finishes now available, like stenciling, staining, and texturing, they're also showing up in kitchens, bathrooms, and even living rooms. Even though concrete itself is durable, various finishes may not be so tough, so you need to take care when cleaning the floor. A soft dust mop or vacuum is usually fine for routine cleaning. To get at more stubborn messes, try using a sponge saturated with water and dishwashing detergent. When you've cleared the mess, rinse with plain water and dry the floor immediately to avoid any discoloration. Cotton cloths are best for drying since synthetics can scratch the finish. If you need to pre-treat a particularly tough stain, use a pet stain and odor remover. They contain organic compounds that will dissolve the stain without harming the finish. Get more info at bobvila.com and write